All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming out today. It's really fun to see some familiar faces and to get to do this talk with my friend Sara. Again, we've done this once before, so we'll see if we've got it down pat this time. It's super fun to be able to do it on Zoom and have my notes right there because I'm a lot less nervous than I was last time we did this when I was pretty sure I would forget my own name. So that's awesome. So I'm Sara Worrell-Berg, and I'm from Stanford Web Services. We're here to talk about how we worked together, our two teams worked together to successfully migrate websites from one platform to the other. And we're going to start off by introducing ourselves, but we want to get a sense of who's in the room. And we want you to understand this visual that we're opening with on the slide here. Because it's really a metaphor that we came up with for kind of the work that we did over the course of the years with this project. In a nutshell, the successful web migration projects take that chaos, that's that crazy scribble on one side, and create order. Makes us all feel calm. And our goal throughout this presentation is just to share with you how we did that and some of the lessons along the way. So to start off, we want to kind of know who we're talking to here. So show of hands, who in here, or show of virtual hands, who in here does any kind of work that ends up on a website? Look at all the little hands pop up. That's awesome. Who in here has an in-house IT or web partner that helps with that? All right, good number of hands. How many of you work with vendors? Couple of hands still. And how many of you think this work always goes smoothly? Never any problems. Oh, look at that. All the hands disappeared and one person's crying. So that's not a good sign. So we hopefully we can help with that. So again, I'm Sara Worrell-Berg, and I lead Stanford Web Services, a creative team that builds websites and open source products in support of Stanford University's mission. A couple of the folks on my team are on the screen, which is awesome. And in my role as the director of the team, I advise schools and departments on all kinds of different components of web strategy. And the team is responsible for the management of somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,000, although shrinking, because a lot of those are D7. University websites, and including those websites that belong to Stanford Engineering.
Great, and I am Sara Bielecki. Hello, everybody. I lead a team that oversees digital communications projects and products in the web, social, and email spaces at the School of Engineering. And starting in 2019, I led a team that partnered with Sara's group on the very big project of migrating our school site plus 8 of our department sites from Drupal 7 to Drupal 9. And if I can, Sara, I want to take a quick detour and just say that a lot of what we will share today is work that, of course, not only Sara and I have done, but that many, including many on this call, have contributed to. So I just want to give a shout out to the Carrie Augensteins that are out there. Well, the one, Carrie Augenstein. I saw, I think, Allison Hill on here, who was really instrumental early on for us. Tanya Deegan on my team. I don't think she's here today, but super critical piece of all of this work. So, and Rachel Mudstock, one of our project managers on Sara's team, who was just a delight to work with as we were moving through this complex work.
Yeah, so our teams have worked together with the Stanford Engineering Communications team since 2014. I had to look that up when we were building this because it feels like it's been since the beginning of time, to upgrade and maintain the school's web ecosystem. And we say ecosystem because there's quite a bit with that. It's a very large school, and it's not all centralized on websites, one single website. They have a lot of websites. So SWS employs UX UI designers, developers, accessibility specialists, and project managers to partner with communications colleagues like Sara. And we are a fairly small team, although growing, within a very large, also growing university. And so there's really a lot of potential for chaos in how we do that kind of work. But we try to manage that through strategic processes that really allow us to scale. And we have this very unique partnership with Stanford Engineering, and it was the catalyst to building a product that now serves not only their single school community, but the broader Stanford community as well, in a way that enables that consistency and organization.
All right, so we want to take a moment and give you all a heads up on where we're headed in this presentation, so you know where we're going. By the time we're done with this conversation, you will have heard about how we brought order to chaos in our school's web ecosystem, and more specifically, how over the past few years, we've worked with SWS to modernize our web technology and design, revamp our content strategy, and put in place simple and repeatable processes to help us launch modern on-brand websites that communicate a clear and compelling vision. With much of the Drupal 7, if not all of the Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration work taking place during a global pandemic.
So let's start with a roadmap of where we're going to take you today. For any of you that have a big web transition in your team's future, this presentation is really aimed at you. And we hope that what we share today about how we navigated this complex web migration work over the past few years will help you and your teams in similar work.
All right, so you can see our chaos ball on the left. We're going to talk you through how we started in the chaos ball, and then how our teams have worked together in the web space to tame the chaos, how that work happened, and we're going to leave you with a few lessons that we've learned.
So a little history. I came to lead Stanford Web Services in 2011, and at that time was charged with the task of launching a new team to help create some order in what was a really enormous, messy, very decentralized web ecosystem. And just to give you a sneak preview, we're still an enormous decentralized web ecosystem. We're just less messy now. Hooray! So the university's brand identity and websites did not reflect the quality of our world-class institution, probably because we hadn't let Carrie Augenstein loose on it yet. So, it's better now. As you can see, this slide probably is making her eyeballs bleed because the logos were all over the place and the websites were as well. There was very little cohesion. Every website was built on its own unique platform. Development costs were very high and efficient support was really impossible. You can't have a single developer team maintain websites in all flavors of different ecosystems and aim for that to go well. Sites were not visually engaging. They decidedly were not accessible. And that was considered an add-on at the time. And they didn't properly tell the story of the interesting and cutting edge research that was happening at the university.
All right, so I want to help bring to life a little bit further the chaos that we were working in. So at the School of Engineering alone in 2015, we had sites like you see here that literally said on them under construction. Not a great look for any page, but particularly not for a page that should be detailing our faculty and research. We had sites that didn't mention the word Stanford Engineering anywhere or look remotely affiliated with the school or the university. So there were lots of these big branding misses. And then this was our homepage from 2015. So if you look at this, you can see that there are about 0 women, or maybe 1 or 2 if you kind of squint at some of those photos in the middle. Most of the faculty in that gallery down at the bottom there were emeritus. The colors are pretty drab and uninviting, the layout's cluttered, photography's uninspired, and I'm pretty certain the impact of the research that's being featured in that lead article isn't coming through for most people who are visiting this page. So we're here in the middle of Silicon Valley, home and birthplace of innovation, and the site certainly didn't reflect that. I think in short, we looked out of touch and likely felt really unrelatable to prospective students and those engineers of the future that we were trying to attract to come here.
So it's easy to see that we definitely needed to figure out how to rein things in. And where did we look, again, starting a brand new SWS team, where did we look for a model to solve this kind of a problem? And, obviously the beacon of organization and order and consistency and trust that in our society that is the United States government, right? That's always what you think of when you think of the government. It's super organized and just super efficient, right? So at that time, when we were starting to take a big picture look at the organization of the university websites, I was looking to the US government as a very unlikely source of inspiration because of some of the success that they were having with the standardization of federal government websites. So US government was sort of oddly similar to a university organization because they also had a very disorganized and ineffective way of creating websites back in 2013. So not unlike our situation at Stanford, both kind of crazy logo farms, although at least they decided they'd have mostly circles although US Army really is standing out as with their square there. So universities are a lot like federal government. They're very loosely affiliated schools, departments, labs, administrative units. They might be under the Stanford/United States flag banner, but they operate really separately and not necessarily with one logo or web design. Does anybody else here work for a school that has a really messy logo landscape? Does this sort of feel familiar? Okay. Anyway, the government web decentralization eventually culminated in a pretty embarrassing and high-profile failed launch of healthcare.gov, which is the health insurance marketplace. It cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build, but it was literally broken on the first day. 6 people were able to sign up for insurance on the first day it opened. 6 in our nation. That's pretty bad. So out of that failure began a new movement to reform the way that the government builds technology for its citizens. It started with the formation of the US Digital Service. So this is kind of happening at the same time that we were starting to get our legs under us as a team. So this department was created to bring user-centered design principles, iterative development, lean data-driven standard practices to the way the government creates technology. At the same time, there was another group, a little skunk works group inside the government, that began 18F, which is an in-house tech and design consultancy offering modern iterative ways of working using open source code and user-centered design as a fee-based service, an agency within the government, which is exactly what our team was doing. So together, these groups created this really quantum leap forward in the world of digital communications in the government by articulating those universal design standards and creating a system of flexible modular pieces that empowered novice web editors to build usable sites with that unified look and feel. Didn't require them to be designers, didn't require them to use any particular platform. They made it kind of agnostic, but they made it easy to use so that they could honor each unit's unique internal structures, needs, and resources, but still deliver that unified look and feel. This model translates really well to a university space and brings order to our chaos. Because after all, what are we at universities if not very large groups of loosely affiliated units with widely varying internal needs, structures, and resources? So here's a view of the 18F in the design system as well.
All right, so this brings us to the work that we've done together. Similar to the US Digital Service that Sara just told a story about, Sara's team was equipped with design and tech skills, as well as the client service mindset to bring this agency idea to life on campus. Over at Stanford Engineering, we saw that, and so we hired their team to help us. They created ways for us to share our communications and messaging goals, and then took what we shared and developed the web technology that we needed to deliver on objectives.
So in 2020, flash forward a bunch of years here, we've already built a Stanford Sites Drupal 7 platform. And in 2020, we secured the funding to build the basic Drupal platform for university-wide use in Drupal 9 for building those sites and managing content. We used user-centered design principles, iterative development, and lean data-driven standard practice to create this core application. But our project was only going to go so far. We received a limited amount of funding. We had to build something that was generic enough for everyone to use, but we weren't going to be able to get it too far. It was our partnership with Stanford Engineering that really kind of made that product great in its first year. They sponsored user research and engaging their departments, and together we determined what design patterns were needed to support those storytelling needs. We then designed and built those features for Stanford Engineering, and they generously contributed them back to our core platform so that everybody could use it.
Definitely a symbiotic relationship here. But thanks to Sara's team and the technology they created since 2015, we have been able to iterate on their basic Drupal platform and expand it in ways that have upgraded our web presence from, as you saw at the beginning, old-fashioned and inconsistent to cohesive, modern, inviting, and accessible. The new sites that we've built together convey a much more accurate and vibrant picture of the school. And the foundation that Sara's team built meant we didn't have to start from scratch and build something basic on our own, but instead could leapfrog forward to not only bring in our own unique style and tone and ethos to the school's central site, but then also share that out with each of our department sites, and now many of our faculty, lab, and institute sites as well. At this point, I believe in addition to our central school site and our 9 department sites, there are somewhere near, someone on this call can probably correct me, but there's, I think, somewhere near 100 of these faculty, lab, institute sites that use SWS's technology and our branding design system, which of course then creates this nice cohesive branded web ecosystem. I'll take you through a couple of examples. This is an example of our new mechanical engineering site. You can see the visual difference between this site and the site images I shared at the beginning of the presentation. The first thing that I'll point out in this example is the photography. We knew from our user research with Sara's team that the images that people found most engaging were images of real people doing real things. It might have been either David Tom or Carrie Augenstein who coined that little phrase, so I want to give some credit there. Users told us that these were the kinds of images that allowed them to really see themselves at the school. It wasn't those headshots that you saw at the beginning that, that kind of helped bring our school to life for our audiences. And then on the next slide, we've got our bioengineering site, again, using photography here of real people doing real things. And in addition, on this slide, I will point out the top navigation. Sara's team helped us create this consistent top navigation structure. And then we communicated to our partners in the departments how this kind of consistency made for a less jarring experience for users who might be jumping from one of our department sites to another. We got feedback in user surveys early on that in the old and consistent web ecosystem, it was really hard to know when people were on an official engineering site or not. And because the navigation experience was different on every site, it was incredibly hard to efficiently find even the most basic information. And then here's a glimpse at our school's central site, our homepage on our central site. I'll point out here that our updated sites play off of a modern visual system that includes ample white space, room for bold typography, and hints of bright accent colors. And so I hope that in these 3 examples, you all can see that the sites do have a much more modern look and feel. They're clearly branded and consistent. And what we're super happy about and our departments are super happy about is that they still make space for our departments to kind of tell their own unique story.
So at the core of making these very large scale migrations possible and scalable were 4 critical elements: a content strategy, a style guide, universal design standards, and a web technology that would enable us to easily replicate that code.
So as we were thinking about that first pillar here, our content strategy, we found this quote from an organization called Content Science Review that says, "Our content operations research has repeatedly found that content leaders and their teams face no shortage of challenges. A content playbook helps overcome most of the top challenges by bridging strategy and execution." So we knew to update our websites, we were going to need to update our content, and to update our content, we needed that playbook. Content, as many of you who work on websites know, is the foundation on which our websites are built. And for us, it was one of the first elements that we tackled on the road to migrating to more modern and compelling websites. In 2015, when my boss, Mike Friedman, many of you on this call probably know him, arrived as the school's communications director, he led a shift in our content strategy. So instead of focusing on internal happenings, he encouraged us to think about telling stories about our research and people in ways that would resonate with audiences beyond just those inside the school. And instead of focusing on regurgitating technical details from technical papers, he encouraged us to think about telling stories that would appeal to a broader set of readers, people who were interested in science and technology, but may not have a PhD in either area. For us, that meant sharing stories that would touch the lives of people in a tangible way, either by illuminating advances that improve lives, or by expanding a reader's knowledge of the field of engineering, who's in it and how they got there. Part of our content strategy also included making diversity a core focus. Technical fields like engineering can get a bad reputation for being exclusive because people in them have talked about the work in ways that people outside of the field can't understand. We really wanted to break down that exclusive feel and tell stories that would shift narratives about who engineers were, who they could be, and what they do. So to be overly simplistic, we really wanted to move beyond the stereotype that engineers are antisocial and sit alone in dark rooms coding things that have no impact on the world. We knew from our work at the school that we were home to creative collaborators who are eager to solve pressing global issues, and our content needed to help us show that. So Sara's team heard this and used user research, design, and technology to help us deliver on our objectives to communicate about engineering in more inclusive and accessible ways. The second piece in how we made this work happen was a style guide. So to cement our content strategy that I just kind of talked in broad strokes about, we developed a style guide that really concretely articulated who we were creating content for, the values we wanted our content to convey, and the tone that we would use to achieve that. This, combined with a pattern library that Sara will share about in a moment, became our content playbook and equipped us with the language that we needed as we moved from strategizing about website migrations to actually executing them.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hardest parts about these kinds of projects is that moment where we're transitioning from talking about our content strategy to executing on it, and realize that before we've actually sat down to code the website or to build the website. So with that strong content strategy and style guide in place, the third critical piece in scaling the creation of these on-brand websites was the development of a pattern library that would include the foundational page elements in code that would help bring that Stanford engineering story and communication goal to life. Everything from the typography we selected to the colors. I know the team put a lot of time into what the color palette should be that was going to work with the Stanford identity, but still be appealing and unique and meet the school's communication goals. To the buttons, the cards, the brand bar, the team developed a library or collection of pieces that any Stanford web project could use in a variety of iterations to build those web pages. And each pattern that we include in this library is tested for usability and accessibility. The library itself is open source and available free to anyone on our campus or beyond to use.
So this this pattern library was critical to us because it introduced constraints for our team that actually freed us up to focus on our content. Having these thoughtfully designed and tested web page elements prevented us from getting stuck in weeks of conversation about what shade of teal should appear on a page or what size or shape a button should be. And so ultimately, the pattern library gave us a set of branded options to work from, which then helped speed up the amount of time it took us to sort of plop content into pages and build, migrate, and launch.
And finally, to enable the web migration work, we adopted and set up a technology called Acquia Cloud Site Factory. In fact, we're already using Cloud Site Factory for our Drupal 7 platform, and our project allowed us to add a Drupal 8 stack and to deploy the new library, the new templates, and help people to start migrating onto that new service. So Site Factory is a multi-site management service, and it allows us to have a single core code base to clone it and create as many websites as we need to out of it. So we reuse those templates when we want to launch a new site. That drastically reduces the duplicate work, and it meant that we weren't reinventing the wheel with each new site that we wanted to build. We managed just 1 or 2 core code bases and themes, and we used them on all the sites hosted on the service. And in fact, the way that we've done it for Stanford Engineering is we have a core platform for all of Stanford, and then we have a platform for Stanford Engineering. And that allows them to do some unique things on their platform, but still pull from the university's core platform onto theirs so that they can benefit from both sharing and having a little bit of unique special sauce.
Okay, so I'm going to pause for a recap here. You've heard a little bit about where we started, sites kind of all over the map. You've heard some about the work that our teams did together to move towards more cohesive sites. You've heard about the content strategy, the design tools, the technology that allowed those cohesive sites to come together. And now we want to move to sharing a few lessons that we've learned along the way, sometimes the hard way, as you can probably imagine. And we hope that these might help any of you who are in the midst of or about to start a migration project run things a little bit more smoothly.
So the first lesson that we'll share is that you need to build your right team. Websites sit really at that junction of technology and communications, and the right team recognizes that and sets up roles that are complementary and not in conflict.
Okay, so fun slide. Here's the team that has made our web transitions possible, all these lovely faces. Sarah's team on the left in this instance, or my left at least, I think it'll be your left, has always owned the technology and design, and our comms team has always owned the school's messaging strategy and overall business goals for web communications.
So Sarah's team told us what and how they were trying to communicate.
And then Sarah's team designed and developed the technology that would support our communications needs.
So over the years in SWS, we've clarified what we hire in for, what we outsource, and crucially, when we need surge capacity. We hire developers and designers in-house. And as our technology evolves, it's really important that we have people on our team who can design iteratively and for accessibility, and people who can build those desired designs using repeatable patterns and secure, maintainable code.
And similarly, we're thinking all the time about what kind of roles we need in-house and what kind of resource we might need to bring in for surge capacity. So on my team's end, for our Drupal 7 to Drupal 9 migration, an essential in-house role was an internal project manager. This was a person who understood enough about internal structures to oversee the relationship between our central communications team at Stanford Engineering, Sarah's web team, and in the case of our department Drupal 9 transitions, also understood enough about the needs of our department's communications leads. For many projects, many web projects, given the small size of our team, we look to bring in outside help when we need surge capacity. So when we took on the work of moving 8 of our department sites to Drupal 9, we knew that this would not be possible on just our existing people power. We originally thought that the surge capacity that we needed to help our departments kind of get over the hump to get going on their Drupal 9 transition was a writer. So we offered to pay for a writer for each of our departments to rewrite some of their content as they were preparing to migrate. However, this was a big learning for us. We came to realize that it wasn't the writer or the writing that was the major blocker for our departments in getting started. The bigger challenge we identified was helping our department partners, many of whom were actually novice web editors, understand all the new features that were available in Drupal 9 so that they could get a sense of how to marry their content with the new web technology that was available. So just for a little context, I just want to walk through a couple of the features that we were working with. Many of these may look familiar, particularly to Stanford folks who are on a Stanford Web Service platform. So this is an example of our photo gallery paragraph type. You guys are probably familiar. I think our last audience maybe wasn't as familiar with that terminology, but I think people here know paragraph types. So this is our photo gallery. This next one is an example of our card, which allows our editors to add an image, some text, and maybe a call to action button. And then we've got our list feature, which is used here to share a couple of news stories in quick succession. And then this is an example of our banner feature. So what we came to realize was that, and this was really critical for us to see this, was that it was overwhelming for users to understand all the new tools that were available and how to best use them. And so they couldn't just go off and start creating new pages. So we saw that, and instead of hiring writers to come in, we actually went out and brought in web content strategists. And I will give another thank you to Allison Ho for introducing us to a few early on. That was very important for us. So these web content strategists were people who had experience merging content with a variety of web features. We ended up training these web content strategists on all the ins and outs of these Drupal features that I've just shown, and then oversaw their work with each of our departments to go through a process of marrying content with the appropriate new features, which ultimately alleviated kind of the parallelization we were seeing from our departments who didn't know, couldn't kind of conceptualize how or where to start.
And this is what the Drupal content management interface looks like for our editors. We designed this specifically for ease of use. We observed with the Drupal 7 product that we ran that it was just not easy to train on, not easy to learn. It was really built for people who felt comfortable in technology. And what we have at Stanford, particularly working with content on Stanford sites-based websites, are people are content editors, or maybe that's not even a core function of their job, but drag and drop is something everyone feels really comfortable and familiar with. It's how Google works. It's how things that we're used to using work. So we designed it for that ease of use. When you're building a content page, the content editor simply selects the right paragraph type for the type of function they want to build on the right and drags it into a row on the left. And then it prompts them to add their text, their images, their other media. So it's important to know what content you're creating, because having that content strategy and the playbook for what you intend to create on that page makes the page building process dead simple. In fact, when Sarah's team was working on this, they did all that planning in advance, handed over things to us, and we did this part.
Okay, so you've heard a little bit about how we've kind of built the right team. I would say that the key to our success employing the right team brings us to our second lesson, which is in order to help us migrate so many sites in such a short amount of time, we needed to create some simple and repeatable processes for mapping out what new web pages would look like before we built them. So what Sarah just alluded to. We know that web migration projects fail either when design is done before content has been developed, or when content is developed without any thought given to design. So our mapping process helped us to avoid a lot of frustration by marrying conversations about content and design from the start of the project. As a part of this mapping exercise, and I'm going to show you a screenshot of a map in a moment, we conducted a needs finding conversation to help understand what goals our departments had for their pages, what content needed to be included, what information hierarchy they wanted to see in order to help them deliver their content in a way that matched their communications needs. And our web content strategists took this information and used our new Drupal 9 features to create actual maps in Google Docs that gave stakeholders an opportunity to see how their content and our new web features could come together with time to review and edit before we actually went to start to build. So here's a look at an actual content map. And I think for those of you that are about to start a project, a migration project, or who may be on the, just looking to do one soon, these are gold. I think they were gold for us. So this is one of the maps that one of our web content strategists created. In Google Docs, they laid out a visual draft of how each department could use our new web features and populated those new features with that department's actual content. The exercise helped our stakeholders refine their content and then also really see what was possible. It also gave them something concrete to react to or to put in front of their stakeholders for reaction to. We ended up approaching the sharing of these maps like we would a design project, creating a timeline for a limited number of rounds for drafts, reviews, and edits. And then when these maps were finally approved, we were confident that they were in great shape and simply able to hand them over to Sarah's team for easy build out. All of our partners in our latest Drupal migration project became accustomed to the format and processes around these maps. And it was these maps and the process for review that we developed that allowed us to streamline our work and made it possible for us as a very small team to tackle the work of leading 8 separate and very large website migrations simultaneously.
I was just going to say, before we move forward, I see one question from Christina. What kind of presence, if any, does the style guide or content map or pattern library have on the back end of each site? The style guide is completely separate. The content map was a one-time use. It was used to do the development of the site. And the pattern library is also separate. So I don't think that there's any reference within the site itself to the style guide. There might be a link on a help page.
Yeah, I think on the help page we have the style guide, but they're essentially just the building blocks that show up in kind of how we word our copy, and of course, like the design library, the pattern library is the shapes of the buttons you see and the colors of the underlines that you see across our site. I hope that helps. Christina, we could always talk more offline if needed.
We have a whole list of resources at the end of the presentation too. So at that same time that Sarah's team was working on the content mapping and writing, my team created the wireframes to finalize the development requirements. Because one thing to know about this project is we were building the ship while sailing it. We were getting ready to build these department sites, but we weren't even done building the Stanford Sites content management platform yet. So their requirements were informing the development, and we were doing the building, rolling it in at the same time. So we created the wireframes to finalize those requirements, and we used them as a guide to build the foundation for all the engineering websites. We were able to build the patterns, the theme, the Drupal modules in parallel with the content base. And dual tracking that work sped up our delivery significantly. The patterns like the cards, the buttons, banners, and so on became the storytelling tools that editors could drag and drop onto a web page when composing content. So Sarah's team established a schedule for which department sites would go first, lined them up like dominoes. And when the initial foundation was tested and approved as ready to go, we'd simply provisioned a new site, took the content maps created by their team and the content strategists, and began building them page by page. And then we turned them over to the departments for review and started on the next one. And fast forward 12 months later, we were done and tired and probably had carpal tunnel.
Oh gosh, I hope not carpal tunnel. Yes, okay, so we're simplifying as much as we can for this presentation, but of course the truth is that this work is really complex and involved a lot of change for people, which brings us to our next lesson. We worked at every opportunity we could to be change agents in a supportive way. We all know that change is hard, and particularly in academic years, it seems like there's never a good time to make a technology change. So we stole a couple tactics from Switch, the change management book by Chip and Dan Heath. Shout out to our business school folks if there are any on the call. And we found ways to do something that they encourage, which is one, shrinking the change, chunking it up, and two, celebrating bright spots. So for us, the key to shrinking the change in this work was establishing regular communications to bring everyone along bit by bit. We didn't want to get to a point where we were like just completely overwhelming people with updates. So we did a few things. We sent brief weekly emails to share practical information about the project's progression. We called these emails 3 things you should know this week about web work. And this steady drip of information gave us a place to regularly share project milestones, developments, etc., so everyone knew where we were when. We also hosted regular meetings via Zoom with each of our department teams to be available for questions and to provide a space for project management to happen together. We started a Slack channel where people could casually ask questions and get thoughts and support immediately. We created an online toolkit with resources like YouTube training videos, so editors could find information on how to use these new features when they needed it. So it really scaled our ability to train folks. And I want to stop and give a shout out to Tanya Deegan because she sat and recorded 13 of those, and there are many YouTube views on each of them. And then, of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, the other way that we worked to make this big change palatable for people was just to find ways to celebrate bright spots. So we kept our ears to the ground, which was much harder than usual because we were doing much of this work remote. So we used our team meetings or our regular meetings with each department to kind of pick up on where people are finding some success. And then we used our regular weekly email to share out some of the successes that people were having so people could see some bright spots. And in the end, we weren't above doing something goofy to celebrate the completion of a project. This was the actual photo we delivered to our department partners' email inboxes on their website launch day. I hope that a photo of our smiling faces and our Zoom boxes with congratulatory and fun sentiments, aka Zoom backdrops that we made ourselves, capture the genuine support that we brought to our partners throughout this work.
This is some happy feedback that we received from one of our faculty members, Dr. Krishna Shenoy, and it really emphasizes that we got the user experience right. So Krishna said, wow, Drupal 9 is so much nicer to work with. I mean, first of all, when's the last time a faculty member even knew the name of the CMS? That's bananas. It's way easier to use, and I love how it forces a uniform, great looking style. Love the banner and much easier way to bring in pictures and videos, which is super true. Drupal 7 did not make that easy, and Drupal 9 does. So getting the user experience right feels really good. By understanding their needs for content and ease of use, we built a tool that they were actually happy to use.
All right, so to sum things up, we will recap what we've talked about. We took in the chaos of our web ecosystem, got inspired by none other than the federal government, refined our content strategy, developed a design library, adopted technology to help us build efficiently and quickly. We also built the right team, created simple and repeatable processes, and worked to be supportive change agents for our partners.
And in doing all of this, we were able to bring order to chaos, to launch modern and on-brand websites that reflect our culture, values, and purpose. We created a code base that's now in use on over 1,000 new websites across the university, while finding new ways to connect with our colleagues during the global pandemic.
So we're proud, we're really proud of the work that has gone into bringing order to the chaos of multiple web migrations. And again, this work is built on the efforts of many folks on each of the teams that you saw on the slide earlier. And it's true, we have gone about taming this chaos without making any mortal enemies along the way, which can be really easy to do in super complex projects with lots of stakeholders. So at the end of the deck, we are including a slide with some specific links to resources, tools, and services that made our work possible. If you're interested, you're welcome to check that out. I think this will be up on the WebCamp website after this presentation. And with that, we will say thank you and stop talking and take a few questions if we have a few moments. Thank you all. Are we on? So now we have to facilitate questions. Do we have any questions?
David, I'll stop the share so we can see each other.
Cool.
Oh yeah, thanks. And there's a question in the chat.
Okay.
While this sounds like a super successful collaboration, if you had a do-over, what would you do differently?
That's a great question. Oh, I would like to hear our department partner answers to that question, because maybe they picked up on something that we are glossing over that we did not do as well as they would have hoped.
Well, so for me, I think something that I would do over, but it wouldn't be possible. I mean, we had to start this because of the volume of engineering work that was to be done. We had to start it before we had finished building the core platform, and the projects, plural, were harder than they would have been if we were already done building the core platform, because we couldn't import really any content. We had to touch on all of it to migrate it. And I think eventually we got to a place where we could import some, but that's just hard. I mean, there were a lot of websites, a lot of nodes, and it's tempting to import everything so that you can get through the migration part faster. The downside of doing that is you might bring in a lot of junk. So it's kind of nice every once in a while to have that restraint of having to touch on all your content, having to read it and make that call of, is this valuable to keep? Is it time to retire this? Is it time to rewrite this? So in a way, it was a blessing. But I know that the projects were also harder than they needed to be if we'd already been done with the core platform.
So I'm not a technology person. I really was the project manager for this and really a communications person. So I will always think about what were the things that we could have done to more clearly communicate complex pieces of this. Again, a lot of our partners were, folks that weren't necessarily web people. Like they kind of got asked to do this job of helping with a web migration, but didn't have really any formal training or exposure in some cases to website migration work. So yeah, I think it's hard for me to come up with a real specific, like one instance that we could have communicated better in, but I'm sure there were moments where we could have paused and thought through how are we talking about the work that needs to be done so that we can be as clear as possible for kind of, a non-technical expert to be able to pick up and kind of join us in the work.
There's another question in the chat. Oh, there's 3 questions now. Anyone have any experience with Drupal and Adobe Experience Manager, I think is what AEM is. And what would you recommend? I'll just jump in there and say it all depends on how you're going to use it and what your business needs are. And they're both fantastic technologies, and it's very hard to really recommend something unless we know what a specific application is going to be.
Yeah, exactly. The thing I would say about a major difference between the two is with Adobe Experience Manager, you're talking about an enterprise service that's backed by a company. So you're paying for a level of support when you subscribe to that, where Drupal is open source. And so you're paying through your time and your expertise to build and maintain it. So it depends on what type of team you are and what resources you have access to run them successfully. But they are both solid products for sure. And Anne has a question for Sara about the shift from providing a writer to offering functionality training.
Yes, and so we started out, offering our departments a writer, thinking like, oh, maybe in order for them to get going on this big migration, they just need to rewrite some of their content. But I think what we realized is each of our sites has lots of content. They just didn't know how to kind of put it into these new features that we had available. I will give credit to Allison Ho really for helping illuminate even for me as I was kind of walking through. She was, she said, I think people need help, taking their content and putting it into all of these new little tools that we're giving them. So she was a person who actually made a connection. I don't know, Allison, if you have anything to say about this, but you made a connection for us to a web content strategist. We ended up talking with them, understanding kind of what their skill set was, that they would be able to come in, kind of do an audit of each of our departments' key content, and then knowing what that content was and getting a little bit of training from us on what our Drupal features were, we're going to be able to bring those things together in ways that our department partners, who again, were not necessarily, web editors as their first job, would then be able to kind of more go get approvals from people in their department that what we were doing was kind of on message. So yeah, that was a super important kind of shift for us. And I would be happy at any point to go into more detail about then, that mapping process that I shared briefly about in the presentation.
I can jump in. Yeah, so I think one of the things that I realized in previous roles when I was doing marketing and communications is that it's really daunting for users to have a platform that is completely a blank page, and they're like, I'm like, there's this fear to start putting in content. But I think what made this project even more tricky was that there wasn't even the platform to begin with, as Sara had mentioned. And so it was really looking at paper, like drawing on paper or a blank Google Doc, and trying to get all this content that didn't have a one-to-one relationship between the old platform and the new platform to put together. And so that's where that digital content strategist really was able to help bridge that gap, that sort of content meets design, but not necessarily something that they're also used to doing in their day-to-day roles, which are mostly administration and faculty members and roles like that, where web is always sort of the last thing that they think about. So, yeah.
So Sean asks, what are some of the best pieces you have in place to keep it from devolving back into chaos over time? I think it's we can probably both tackle this from a code and design through web governance and content governance. But why don't you tackle like the governance editor relationship question?
Yeah, Sean, I think that's something that we have started to pivot to focusing to think about now that our sites, now that we're done with the big push of getting our sites up and running. So we are in the process of developing some web governance processes, right? Some quarterly reviews, some monthly reviews, to just check in to see how our departments are doing. We have some work, if I'm really honest here, we have some work ahead of us to kind of continue to communicate, because Sara's team will continue, as she'll probably say in a minute, they're going to continue to iterate on this platform. We have some work to do on our end to kind of identify some communication channels back to our partners to keep them posted on how the technology is evolving so that they can continue on their ends to evolve as well. So I think we are in process on that a little bit. Definitely some working to develop some web governance structures for things like review, but then also we need to develop some processes for communicating kind of new information so people can update as the platform updates.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think of this as it's like fighting erosion. You know, erosion is inevitable, but you can keep fighting it. You can keep pushing back, you keep shoring up the seawall. And the logo farm that we showed earlier, you know, just that everything being a little bit different. I don't see that happening again because the university's gotten so much better about providing good, solid identity tools that are flexible and regularly talking to people across the university about what their communications needs are and providing a good identity guideline with some flexibility, some choices in it, so they don't feel locked into a particular look. So we're never going to be in an environment at a place like Stanford where you can fully centralize and say, thou shalt, you must have a look that's like this. That's just not going to happen at a university like Stanford, but you can attract them in with good, solid, free, flexible tools that give them a good look and feel, that make the creation of the website that looks like that easy to achieve. And then what we find is, as there is a need to evolve, we're brought into big custom design projects, and it's up to our team and our communications partners to push the university's look and feel forward without totally recreating. How do you evolve the look and feel, but still keep it true to the central identity? And then that evolution rolls back into the free products, into the free services that everyone else gets to use. We bring those new features in and we elevate everyone. So I think we fight that erosion by providing things that people want to use, and hopefully lowering or eliminating the barrier for using them by making them free or accessible. And Janice asks, did we use a shared drive or a box to communicate timelines, and who does what for all those different department sites? I remember we had a couple of things. We had a website, a project website that communicated the project goals, had the timelines on there and links to important resources. Did you do anything else to keep the different departments informed about what the timelines were?
Yeah, we did. We use Drive like crazy, right? We had a Drive folder for every department that we were working with, where we kept their individual timeline, and we were kind of regularly referencing that in our regular meetings with them to try to keep people on track and, you know, make people aware of when deadlines for feedback were and that sort of thing, so we didn't get delayed. So yes, what else was there in that? We used Drive a ton. We used we just created a Google Sheet with a timeline to share with our departments. I think on the back end, our project manager, Rachel, probably had more sophisticated timeline tools. I'm blanking on the names of the tools that she uses, but for kind of client facing, in a sense, we just use simple Google Sheets because they were easy to follow. And yeah, set up, you know, in some of our early conversations or some of our first meetings with our departments to start the project, we did have conversations about roles and responsibilities to clarify kind of what would be expected of, you know, each participant in the project.
Any other questions? These are all great questions.
I have a quick follow-up on the erosion is just periodic training or onboarding of new authors and new people using the system, because that's something that we do on Stanford Sites is we have you know, an introduction to Stanford Sites, and that kind of gets people rolling, but then that also teaches the expected norms on how the tool is used and how it's used in the context of whichever site that you happen to be managing. So that's a helpful way to keep the erosion down, is help those new users learn how to use the tools.
Great point. All right, everybody. Last chance. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun to share about the journey with you and to hear some of your great questions and help us think about what we need to be doing next, adding to our to-do list. We will get the presentation posted to the WebCamp site, and that does have the link to all of the different services and tools like 18F, the digital service, web design standards, Decanter, which is the pattern library we were talking about earlier, the content planning tools like Gather Content, Site Factory and Slack, and the markup tool as well. So keep an eye out for that. And otherwise, if you're in the Bay Area, I hope you're planning to join the happy hour at 4 o'clock at the Treehouse. If not, I hope you're planning on having your own happy hour or relaxing moment in your own home. But thanks again for joining us at Stanford WebCamp. It's been a lot of fun. It's great to see familiar faces too.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, Sarah. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, have a good weekend. Happy Mother's Day to the mothers on the call.
Oh, happy Mother's Day.